Okay, hello. Right, tomorrow we're going to be looking at rounding any whole number to a required degree of accuracy. And basically what that means is we can round any number to the nearest 10, the nearest 100, the nearest 1000, and so on. And there are some simple steps that we need to follow in order to do this. It's really easy. So if we look at the first one, it's round 2431 to the nearest 10. So the first thing you've got to look at is what it's asking you to round to. In this case, it's the nearest 10. So all we've got to look at is that part of the number. Okay, so the tens column and the units column in this case, because it's the nearest 10. If we look at it and read it out loud, it's 31. We've now got to decide which 10 that's closest to, the one above it or the one below it. Okay, so if we look at 31, the nearest 10 above that is 40. And the nearest 10 below 31 is 30. And of course 31 is closer to 30 than 40. So we are going to round this number to 30, okay? 31 is closer to 30 than 40. And then we just write the whole number out with our tens rounded. So rounding 2431 to the nearest 10, it's going to look like 2430. Because 31 is closer to 30 than 40. Okay? Now if that number was, for example, 2437 and we had to round it to the nearest 10, again I'd read that part of the number, which is 37. I think about the tens that's above it, which is 40, and the 10 that's below it, which is 30. And of course this time 37 is closer to 40. It's 3 away from 40. And so to round that to the nearest 10 would be 2440 that time. Okay? Right, we're going to show you a second example now, the one below this. And this time it's round 2000, the same number, 2431, but this time we're rounding it to the nearest 100. Okay? So I just follow the same steps. I look at the part of the number that I'm being asked to round to. In this case, I'm being asked to round to the nearest 100. So I look at that part of the number, okay, from the hundreds column. 431. I think about the next 100 that's higher than that, and I think about the one next 100 that's lower than that. I can say them out loud because it might help me. So the next 100 up is 500. The next 100 lower than 431 is 400. And I know that 431 is closer to 400 than it is to 500, okay? Anything above 450 would be closer to 500. This is only 431, so it's closer to 400. So I can round this number and it would look like 2400 to the nearest 100, okay? 2400 because 431 is closer to 400 than 500. Now again, if this number was 2451 and I had to round it to the nearest 100, again I know that 500 is the next 100 up and 400 is the previous 100, and because it's past 50 I know that it's going to 500 is going to be the nearest 100. So rounding 2451 to the nearest 100, it would be 2500. Okay? Right, hopefully you're all with me so far. We've got a couple more to look at on the next page and then we'll be done. If you follow those steps, it's the same for any number you have to round to. So if we look at the next page over here, we've got a much bigger number because we've been looking at these big numbers in class, haven't we? And here, we can read this number together, it's 879,142. And this time we've been asked to round this number to the nearest 1000. Okay? So, again, I'm going to read the number from the part that I'm being asked to round to. This time I'm being asked to round to the nearest 1000. So I look at my thousands column, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and I read the number from the thousands column to decide where it is. 9142. Okay, I think of my next 1000 up, which is 10,000. I think of my 1000 that's just below that, which is 9,000. I know that 9142 is closer to 9,000 than it is to 10,000. So I know that I'm going to round this number to 9,000 for the nearest 1,000. Okay, and I've got to write the whole number out rounded to the nearest 1,000. So it's going to look like this: 879,000. Because 9,000 is the nearest 1,000. Okay. Now I'm going to show you one more thing before we finish off. Sometimes numbers lie exactly halfway. So for example, if I had this number, 975, and I was asked to round this number to the nearest 10, again I'd follow my 3 steps. I would look at, I'm rounding it to the nearest 10, so I'm looking at the tens column onwards. 75, okay? I think about the next tens up, which is 80, the next, or the previous 10 down, which is 70, and I decide which one it's closest to. In this case, it's exactly halfway, okay? When the number is exactly halfway between the 2 other numbers, you always round up, okay? Always. In this case, it's 75, that's halfway, which means I'm rounding up. So the nearest 10 is going to be 80. So 975 rounded to the nearest 10 is going to be 980. Okay? So that's just one you have to remember. Right, let's recap everything that we've done ready for tomorrow's lesson. Steps to remember. Number 1. Read out loud, that's really important, the part of the number you are being asked to round to. Okay? Step 2, decide which end that number is closest to. And 3, if it's exactly halfway, we're always going to round up. Okay? Right, we're going to be looking at those things again in tomorrow's lesson. Hopefully this has helped you. Try a few numbers out for practicing and be ready to come in tomorrow and go with the lesson. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.